This is what we've opted to live in for the last 6 months.
When the house Alicia Fina was renting sold, she was forced to move out. She couldn't find another house she could afford, so her elderly mother and 3 teenage children moved with her into this car.
I don't want to take my family back on the streets again.
Soon after, her daughter was taken by social services. 6 weeks ago, exhausted, they moved into emergency housing, a motel unit near the airport.
I know we're not in the van anymore. We're under a roof, but it still feels the same because it's not our home. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to lose any more of my kids due to being homeless. This is where we live, me and my 6 kids.
At a nearby house, we meet Hope. She prefers we don't use her real name. She's also a victim of Auckland's housing price boom. She says friends are letting her stay with her 6 children, one of them autistic, in this derelict garage while they wait for social housing.
Since we've been here, my little one's been sick, so my kids are healthy kids. Yeah, but since we've been in here, she's been sick. It's because of the cold and the damp, and I wish that I can do better for my kids.
According to the University of Otago, homelessness in New Zealand is now at record levels, with more than 40,000 people living rough or in garages. The idea of equality, equal opportunities and the fair distribution of wealth has long been a core value for most New Zealanders. But here in Auckland, the rapid rise in house values and rents and an acute shortage of social housing means that for many families, like the one living in this garage, housing has become a huge challenge. For many, it's too much. We found dozens of families sleeping in their cars next to a park south of the city. They were unwilling to talk to us on camera, but told us that despite having jobs, they were still unable to find a house to rent.
Where house prices rise, in the last 4 years, for example, are up 85%. And for most of that time, rents didn't rise nearly as fast. But just in the last couple of years, it's starting to overflow into rents. And that's putting enormous pressure on those people who have relatively low incomes and incomes that aren't growing very fast.
While social services have struggled to keep pace with the crisis, local Māori have opened their doors, taking in 160 people in the last 10 weeks.
When they arrive, the families are absolutely depleted. Some of the parents have slept for a day or two while we've looked after the kids. Some of the kids are sick, they're all very, very hungry, and the chance to sleep in one place in a bed here at the marae is a blessing to them, and you can see they're relieved.
The rapid rise in rental prices is affecting all Aucklanders who don't own a home, but Māori and Pacific Islanders are the most vulnerable.
82% of Pacific families do not own their own homes. They rent either from the government or from private landlords. And so when you see rent going up, increasing at huge amounts, it actually disproportionately affects Pacific and Māori families.
When a landlord decides to sell a house, they're often doing it quite quickly. So the turnover of rental properties in New Zealand is very high. In fact, it's less than 18 months. So that means people are continually bouncing from house to house. That means housing is very unstable, often it's incredibly poor quality. It flows through into very high rates of chest infections, skin infections, overcrowding.
The government has responded by promising to spend $1.3 billion on building around 6,000 new social houses over the next 5 years. It's a decision the opposition Labour Party says is in direct contradiction to the government's plan to sell off social housing.
We know that the stock of state houses in New Zealand was up at about 69,000 at one time. They are now wanting to sell 9,000 of those state houses at a time when we have such a huge shortage of houses.
Despite repeated requests, the Minister of Social Housing, Paula Bennett, herself once a beneficiary, declined our request for an interview.
I knew New Zealand back in the days it was a lot easier than it is now. And for the families that I have met out on the streets, they all shouldn't be on the streets at all. We all should be in our own homes and not relying on the streets to survive.
Just a few days after we filmed with Alicia and Hope, and we were told as a result of it, both their cases were given priority and they were offered social housing. They're both due to move in the coming weeks, but for hundreds of other families, the wait continues. A long winter without a home. Pervomaisky Al Jazeera, Auckland.